Change your mind, change your money, change your life. I am Coach Rob Lee Simmons, the host of this podcast, and let me be your tour guide to greatness. If I was doing any better, I would be you. Welcome to the Greatness Academy podcast. I am here with my main man, Richard Oz Green. He is just one of the leaders of our time, man. And I really appreciate you for jumping on, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and thank you for having me.
Man, you are a super leader. So the first thing I want to know is from like conception to where we are now. So tell me how you grew up.
Man, that is a story right there. From a little small town called Mulberry, Florida, right? Like Mayberry, Mulberry, Florida. It's one of them towns where you go in it says entering Mulberry. As soon as you pass it, it says exiting Mulberry. That's how tiny it was. Like I want to say my graduating class, we had 95 people in it.
Wow.
For high school, like 95 people. Very small town where everybody knows everybody. Everybody know the old cliche. I grew up in the country, so I'm an old country boy. My family's trades was we did scrap metal, landscaping, and plumbing, general maintenance type deals. Growing up, didn't have a whole lot of money, but had a whole lot of love in the home. And the struggles that I went through growing up prepared me for this life called the Army, which I'm at retirement now. From that's inception, joined the military in 2004, went on down to Fort Bragg, drank all that Kool-Aid. Became a Kool-Aid baby for a very long time. Left Fort Bragg, was at Fort Bragg for 8 years.
Okay.
Then I went to, deployed twice to Afghanistan, got back from Afghanistan, went to Korea, was there for 2 years, left Korea, went to Alaska, back to jumping out of airplanes again in the snow. Man, down there, running away from moose and bears and stuff in Alaska. Left Alaska, went to JBLM in Washington, got the experience and love all over the rain for those 3 years. Left JBLM, went back to Fort Bragg, jumped out of airplanes for a little bit. Now I'm here in El Paso, getting ready to retire.
I love it.
And that should sum it up. Been married to my wife for 17 years. We're going on 18 now. I do a lot of stuff, which we'll probably get to within the conversation, but that's me in a nutshell.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I know you do a number of things, but one of the things that I see that is centralized around a lot of your content is leadership. How did you get the leadership bug? When did you get bit with the leadership bug?
Oh my God. I follow John C. Maxwell. I'm a big proponent of John C. Maxwell. I love influence, but I want to say, you know how they ask the question, are leaders born or are they developed? Yeah. And John C. Maxwell always said, I've never seen a leader who wasn't born, because if he wasn't born, he wouldn't be alive. But out of the way, that's just a little joke that he has. I want to say I've always had the ability to be of service for people and be there for them in a way that they would want to follow me. And it's just something that I've always just been able to do it. And once, I want to say I came in the Army and I was probably a staff sergeant, because it's funny how this happens, because I go to Fort Bragg. Everybody knows the 82nd has a very specific way of leadership that a lot of people don't agree with, right?
Yeah.
I learned that from them. I go down to, I want to say when I was in Korea, I got sent to MRT level 1. And as I'm in MRT level 1, this is like 2011. MRT is new to the Army. I think I was in the second or third class that they had. I'm in the class and they start teaching us these concepts about resiliency, right? And coming from the 82nd is, hey, you in people's face, raw, you're going to do what I say, all of this good stuff. While I was sitting in that MRT class and they start talking to us about active constructive response and the 4 different ways that you can respond. And they told us about active destructive. They had us do an exercise where we had to pick 4 groups of people that we communicate with the most. I picked my wife, my brothers, my soldiers, and I forget who the 4th group was, but I was communicating active destructively with the people I cared the most about 75% of the time. And the way that they broke it down to us, there was like, people don't try to do it. It's just that when we care about somebody, we want to point out the things that they're doing that could potentially harm them or that we see that is wrong. And that's the worst way to communicate. And that's how you destroy relationship.
Right.
So in doing so, it really made me think back to my leadership style and how I was leading. And I want to say that's the point. If I had to put my finger on it, that was the point where I really changed my trajectory, changed how I looked at leadership, and started really digging into switching from appointed authority to an influential leadership style.
So as you start to get into leadership, man, it is a very deep component of understanding people. When did you start to focus on trying to understand people to become a better leader?
Oh, I think when I started focusing on people and shifting my focus away from everything else was when there was like pivotal points in my life where I made mistakes that could have possibly ended my career.
Mm,
And there was leaders that granted me grace. They granted me grace. So that leadership style of where be a rah rah is black and white, that really changed how I view things because it made me have empathy for others. Because at that point, I would say I wasn't a horrible person, but I didn't necessarily have the level of empathy that would have been effective for a leader. So by those leaders showing me empathy, giving me grace instead of just locking me up, chopping me up, that's really what made me switch to focusing on people because I'm here. The way that we were brought up is, yeah, you're here. You're going to be here while everybody's sucking. If everybody feeling sandbags, I'm feeling sandbags.
right.
Everybody digging a ditch, I'm digging a ditch. But there's a difference in being present and your presence. And people don't really understand the difference in between the two. So you can be present, but you're not present.
Yeah.
Like you're here, you're doing all of the things, but you're not connecting with people. You're barking orders. There's a difference in connecting with people and barking orders because communication happens on the receiver's terms. And if the receiver doesn't want to hear what you got to say, then that's not effective communication and you're not leading.
Yeah. Yeah. That's dope. That's dope. I think that's a nugget, man. So I usually got my notepad too far for me to step out of the step out of, I'm gonna have to go back here and watch this one again. Hey, so outside of serving, you probably do a handful of things. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are some of the things that you do outside of serving in the military?
Oh man. So picked up a nasty little habit of dogs.
Oh, love it.
So I have a Connie Corso and I have a Siberian Husky. And the one of the part of the condition of me getting the first Cane Corso with the breeder was that I had to show him. So I had to learn how to show dogs. Me and my wife have trained and championed out one of our Cane Corsos. So we've been in the show circuit and stuff right now. Like we've been in the show circuit and right now we have our second Cane Corso that we're going to go ahead and get in the shows and all of that good stuff as well. So I train and show dogs. I do a bit of podcasting. I'm out there shaking things up, making trouble. That's pretty much it. Like I do my social media thing. I do my leadership thing. I am a real estate investor. And I am also right now in the process of setting up a leadership consulting company to transition into when I transition out of the military, where I will consult for churches and government agencies. Because the thing that I've come to realize is that there's a lot of people who fundamentally don't understand leadership and they can't assess their organizations to determine what it is not going right and how to fix it.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you this, man, and now I'm just thinking about a lot of my passions. One of my passions is homeless veterans,
Mm,
and one of 'em is a big fight for me. One of my fraternities, that's one of our 5 initiatives is fighting homeless veterans, and then what you're saying really reminds me to put this in the atmosphere, but also I'm just gonna come with a question as well. As folks are transitioning out, and this is where I gotta apologize to some of my fans. This is not the all military show, but most of the time I'm gonna have on veterans and successful veterans, and most of the veterans find themselves that I talk to find that they are always doing work before they get out of service, and I think that
mm,
is super important because I literally seen the perspective of the soldiers who prepare to get out, and then the homeless veterans, which that we have is certain luxuries that everybody doesn't think they're luxuries until you transition without a plan. And it's so important to do that. And I love that you're getting into some of the things that you love, and then you have your business and your podcasting. But where did you learn to start transitioning earlier than it's a failed tap?
My brother, I'm glad you asked me that because that's the interesting story. So when I was at JBLM, I was the first sergeant. And one of my buddies went through a real tough time. Me and him had met in Alaska, and he was down at JBLM at the same time I was. And he literally had a nervous breakdown because he didn't go get the help that he needed until it was too late. And when I say too late, like it was to the point where he did things that he didn't want to do, and it could have put himself in danger or put his family in danger. But he finally went and got the help that he needed. So after he goes and gets the help, he comes back. He says, "Hey, bro, I waited too long to get help. I'm getting help now, but I want the opportunity to tell my story. So I want to put together like a mental health awareness day. Would you mind bringing your company down so that I can give them this presentation?" I'm like, absolutely. And I'll get a couple other companies from the battalion to come down as well. So we go down there to the chapel, and he has this thing set up. It's beautiful. He has the Mystic team out. They do the face painting exercise with masks, and they talk about, hey, there's this person behind a mask that we don't want people to see, and we walk around with these masks on, and sometimes we can't see past those masks, so we don't really see what's going on with a person. But that comes through connecting with people, right? And we're back to leadership. He also had Wounded Warrior Project come out, and then he told his story. Well, once he wrapped his story up, there was a sergeant major who was retired. He had been retired for about 20 years. And he comes up to the front and he begins to tell his story. But in telling his story, he's bashing the Army. The entire time he's bashing the Army. When I got out of the military, I didn't have anything to put on, and I didn't know who I was, and just all of this stuff. And I have all of these young, impressionable soldiers. So I stood up very respectfully. I intervened. I said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, thank you. We appreciate you coming out. But if we're running short on time, if you don't mind." So he goes and sits down. I tell the audience, I'm like, "Hey, look, this is very unfortunate what happened to the sergeant major, but we have programs now that should help alleviate these things. Yes, SFL TAP, we got the resiliency program. You can go over to behavioral health. There's all of these systems, when used properly, that will aid you in not being in the same unfortunate position that he's in, right?" Now, as all of this is going on, this is what's playing in my head. I looked at him and I said, "You know what? That will not be me." And I feel like God made that happen for a reason. I
Yeah.
needed that. I needed that because for the longest, I had been talking about real estate. Like I wanted to do real estate, and I never pulled a trigger on it. That afternoon, I looked in my email and there just happened to be a whole bunch of real estate conventions in there. I clicked on one. I went and told the wife about it. That afternoon, 2 days later, we went to a little 1 hour briefing or whatever. And then that led us going to a 3 day seminar where we made an investment into ourselves to go ahead and set up a real estate investment company. And the rest is history. But I needed that exchange that Sergeant Major did in front of everybody to push me to go do that because I wasn't thinking like that. Like the man was sitting here saying that he didn't have civilian clothes because he was so Army.
Hmm.
And to me, like when someone says it out loud, that's crazy. But I can see how it happened. And I wanted to prevent myself from being in that same position. And that's what led me to prepping. And this was 2017.
Yeah.
This was literally 2017.
Yeah. So you is really nah, fam. That's not about to be me.
This is finite, not infinite.
Straight up. I have one of my first interviews I did. His name is Jay Salters. He is the founder of Act Now. And Act Now,
Mm.
basically, they educate veterans and service members as well, but through educational programs. Now, the thing about this is Jay has been operating this business, I want to say for something like 6 years, 6 to 8 years or something like that. And me and him have had this conversation because now this is it's a very large program, a very successful program. And Jay says to me, I started when I was only 10 years in the service, and somebody told me, "Hey, I need to get started." So he got straight to the business, and he's been operating ever since, and he is still active duty, and he is getting it in. And I think that is like super important. I asked him the same question. "Hey, how early should I start?" And he said, I started 6 years ago and I still got another 4 years before I retire. So it's never too early. I think the issue comes from people coming from not having a lot to getting just enough and not knowing that there's more. Right.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Just you hit a nerve with that one because I remember telling somebody, I said, coming from where a lot of people come from, because a lot of our stories are very close in comparison. Like a lot of our stories are the same. And when you grow up and you believe success is my lights are still on, I've got food, I've got a roof over my head. When that is success for you, you need other people in your environment to show you other things so that you can say, okay, cool, I got that. But let's continue so that we can build some generational wealth and make it a little bit easier for the next generation. Not to say that we want them to slack off, but we want them to have more options so that we can do more things.
For sure. For sure. And that's why I say sometimes it really ain't about a head start, but you have to realize you don't want to start behind. And that's like the biggest thing when you about to make me go down the financial education perspective. But a lot of times I do hear people say, I don't want my kid, I don't want my kids to just be given anything. And I said, but you don't want them to struggle either. And
Come
that's
on now.
the biggest piece about that is in the Black culture, we have always started, everybody else has the head start. And we built that systematically in our culture to hold each other down, and that's really where the crab in the barrel comes from. So if we just understand, leave me with something that I ain't got to struggle with. Leave me with a house. I ain't gonna tear the house down. Get me a hoopty or something. Leave me on the road. Don't just got me out here hanging because it's very hard for a 21-year-old, especially if they're not truly college educated, to like really understand what it is their need because now see you got me going down to you.
I told you.
I told you. Oh man. But
Hey,
you
go
open up
on.
a
Go with
can.
it.
You open up a
Go with it.
can. But by the time they're 35, they're struggling. They got this 30-year mortgage. They pay off the 30 years. They're 65. It's almost time to die. And they didn't experience the world or anything. And so you didn't give them a head start. You just made them struggle until they die. And that is so backwards to me. And I don't understand it. And so that's why I say I'm not trying to give my kids not a giant head start or a silver spoon, but I want them to be able to experience the world and experience being young and experience life as a real human being. Experiencing life as a real human being is not going to work 8 hours for 40 years and that's it. And go on vacation 2 times a year. That is not life. That is not how life was built. But enough about me. This is
No, hold on, because you hit no, look, my brother, you hit some stuff, right? And I think oftentimes what people don't realize is this, right? To go back to the crab in the barrel thing. People always talk about the crab in the barrel thing. The crab in the barrel thing, when crabs latch on to other crabs, that's a defense mechanism.
mm,
Now,
mm,
think about how that defense mechanism ties into psychology, right?
man.
If it's a defense mechanism and everybody keeps saying, I don't want to leave the next generation all this money, I don't want to give them a silver spoon, the money ain't the problem. Like people always recite that the Bible verse that money is the root of all evil. That's not what the verse says.
Right.
It says
Right.
the love of money is the root of all evil.
Right.
So when we look at it from that angle, like the issue that we have character issues, the money don't make people bad. It exposes the badness that's in them already.
Yeah.
And
Facts.
and I think the most important thing that we can leave our children and the next generation is knowledge and to ensure that they have good character. If we ensure that they have good character, it wouldn't because look at the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts, right? The Vanderbilts used to be richer than the Rockefellers.
Mhm.
But you know what the difference in the two families was? One had a trust and one didn't. One had a board of trustees and one didn't. And the trust that they use, like we run around here using living revocable trust and all these other trusts and stuff, they had a dynasty trust. You pay for a dynasty trust one time and your family got it for the rest of the time your family exists. So is knowledge and making sure that our children have character. You know,
I love it. I love it. I love it. I knew you was gonna open. You opened up a can, man. You said right before we got started. You said you say you don't talk a lot, but we gonna see after we get into it. We done got into it, man. We done got
I
into
have that effect on people.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And so before I started to go down the rabbit hole, I wanted to touch bases back when we were telling the story about mental health. I think mental health is one of the things that men in general don't talk about. What's your perspective on mental health?
Man, my perspective on mental health is that you need to seek out help before you do something that is going to change your life for the rest of your life. Right. So I get it. I get it. There's this dynamic about men in the United States. And I can only speak for our culture because I've only lived in this culture. I've been a part of this culture. Like I've seen other cultures, but I've only been in this culture. So the thing that I'll say is that there's this stigma that if you go get help, you're not strong. I say there's nothing further from the truth because it's harder to go get help than it is to just sit there and suffer.
Yeah.
Like some people they'll sit there, "Oh, I'm gonna suck it up," or they'll live in the now and they'll say, "Oh, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better." And what did Einstein say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So I would say go get help before you do something that's gonna change your life forever. Like you once you do that thing, whether it be choose a permanent solution to a temporary problem or you go out here and you hurt somebody and they're no longer with us. Once you do that stuff, you're gonna, if God willing, you can recover from it, but your life is gonna be changed forever. So the best thing to do is go get help. There and I look at it from another standpoint as well, especially talking about men going to get help. So if I needed a house built, I wouldn't go to a mechanic.
Right.
If I needed food cooked, I wouldn't go to a doctor. If I was sick, I wouldn't go to a home builder, right? All of these people have knowledge that puts them into a position to be able to help you out. And it's the same thing with coaching. Like guys play all of these sports and stuff all the time. You need a coach in a sport. The purpose of that coach is to normalize behaviors to let you know, look, when you do this thing right here, your knees and ankles are gonna feel like this. That's normal. All right. That's that lactic acid buildup, right? That's normal. Now, go home, get in some Epsom salt. You're gonna soak a little bit. Tomorrow you're gonna be a little sore. You go out there, you run a little bit, you're gonna run that lactic acid out, you're gonna be okay. That's a coach's job. So if we don't go get a coach for a sport, why won't we go get a coach for what's going on with us inside?
Yeah. That's deep because my therapist always says, God be like, I know I'm not crazy. And they be like, Robert, that's normal. And I'd be like, it's okay. So it's okay for me to feel that. I always thought it wasn't okay for me to feel certain ways or have these perspectives. And for you to say, hey, a coach normalizes the activity. And I was like, that's because when I be like on the other spectrum where I say something that's off the wall and they're like, people usually don't do that. So that puts me back in the boundary of this is where you should be. Let's try this instead. And so that's really good. And as of recent, I have really been open about my counseling and therapy because it's so necessary. And it's the absolute reason that you said is you can't go to a chef and get your oil changed. Like it don't work that way. Like they might go to change the oil in your French fries, but you don't want them to change the oil in your car. So I went and I got the right doctor and the right coach for my experiences, and I've been feeling so much better that I really want to be like an advocate for mental. Like go seek help, and sometimes calling your homeboy who's just gonna and nod you the whole time ain't the best help or solution, and then definitely keeping it in is not. But sharing that experience with a professional definitely has helped me in my journey. Let me ask you this though: in a world full of distractions, how do you create an atmosphere where you can be your normal self?
Oh man, I think you just hit on it. You just hit on it when you talked about that circle, like having the homeboys in the circle or whoever. I really focus on my circle, the people that's in my circle. One of my buddies, D Hicks, he just had a baby shower and he proposed to his now fiance. And what I said at the baby shower was that as we get older, how we view friendship changes. It takes on a different meaning because when you're trying to find somebody to hang out with or go play some games, do whatever, you just chilling. When you get older, nah, it's expensive to be my friend because if you call me at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and you my friend, I'm picking the phone up. If one of my friends call me and I got time where I'm not in a position to where I don't care what it is, I'm picking the phone up. And when you need me, I'm on the way. You need something, you got it. That's friendship to me. It ain't like, we see each other and we got a friendship of convenience. I don't have
Yeah.
friendships of convenience, right? So I think you really hit on it by having people, not just like-minded people, but having people who are as committed to you as you are to them. That's what helps me be my authentic self. Because the one thing that I hate the most is when people say it's lonely at the top. It's not lonely at the top. You made it that way. You made it that way. You
Right.
chose to freaking be unapproachable, to remove people from your life. Because often when I hear people say that, it's because they got a chink in their armor, and it's a
Mm.
big chink in their armor, and they put this false sense of hardness on the outside because they don't want people to see that they got some stuff going on, and they feel like once people see that, they're gonna try to exploit it. So what do? They push everybody away. I can't have you close to me. It's a chink in their armor. So brother, I think you hit it right on the head by having people in your circle that's gonna tell you, like, bro, you jacked up.
Yeah.
Like me and my boys, we don't want that. And when we call each other, we want the truth. We ain't, bro, I didn't call you to sugarcoat some stuff with me. I need you to keep it real. If I'm jacked up, tell me I'm jacked up. When you jacked up, I'm gonna tell you jacked up. And we take that to the heart and we act off of that.
Yeah, I think that's real. In fact, I hold my friends accountable for not holding me accountable. Like, you just sat here and watched me do that and you ain't gonna say nothing? Okay, got you. But, like, it's super important to have a good circle. Speaking of which, I wanna know, like, through your journey, who are some of the people who influence you? This is the time to shout them out. Who are those people? Let's give them a shout out.
Brother, you finna get me in trouble because there's so many, man. First person I'm gonna say is my wife, right?
Yeah.
My wife, Tamiko Green, has been my biggest champion, my biggest supporter. Like, she's the person that makes sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, when I'm off, she like, "Babe, what's up? What's going on? Let's talk." Like, she knows me. She freaking knows me, and I know her. So, first person will have to be my wife. Then my three homeboys who will remain nameless. On top of that, Sergeant Major Garrett Griffin.
Mm.
He was the first sergeant in AOC when I went in 2010. And this man has been a mentor ever since then. The next two people I'm gonna probably say is Raymond Wilson. When I was a private, I had just got to Fort Bragg and I had a 96 Isuzu Rodeo. This was in 2004.
Yeah.
I shipped out to dang on from replacement to my battalion from a Thursday. Friday night, I flipped that truck going 75 miles an hour.
Wow.
Flipped it, ran onto the road, flipped the truck, and the MPs came, took me to the MP station. Team leader came pick me up from the MP station. I'm in my room, depressed as crap, and this staff sergeant walks in. I'm a PFC at the time. The staff sergeant walks in. He says, "Son, I heard you got an accident." I don't even know this guy. He ain't in my company at nothing. I don't know this dude at all. "Hey, son, I heard you got an accident." I'm assuming it's an NCO. I stand up like, "Roger that, sergeant." He's like, "Hey, man, relax." He said, "Get you some rest. I'm gonna take care of you." That was 2004. And that man has been my mentor right to this day. He's retired now.
That's amazing.
The last person is probably gonna be it's gonna get a lot of people heated on like a college. This ain't a popular person. Dang on Sergeant Major Mark Dangerfield. Mark Dangerfield. And I can't leave out my boy, TPSGL, D Hicks. Like, I I have a large network, but I got a small circle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's actually perfect. And then you always have an extensive network because, and we talk about this a little bit in the Go Business podcast, but you never know when your barber needs a landscape, this landscape. You never know when the landscape artist needs somebody to fix his shoes. So it's always good to have a large network, but the people that you
Mhm.
trust, that's a little bit more tight niche and um very understandable. I asked this question to my last guest, and we got a chuckle out of it because I just threw him off with it. But if someone wrote a book about your life, what would it be titled?
Here lies the man who believed he could do everything.
I love it. I love it. Why you say that?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
I don't know when. I remember I think we may be close in age, but I remember when I was growing up, we were always taught that You can do anything you put your mind to. And I am a firm believer in that. A lot of people have all of these stories where they're just like, oh man, this awful thing happened to me, or I couldn't do this, or I failed a billion times. That has not been my experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not discrediting people who have had that experience, but that has not been my experience. In my experience, if I really want to do something, the only thing I got to do is just move towards it. And I ain't got to be an expert when I start. I'm gonna figure it out along the way. And by the time I get to where I need to go to, it's figured out. And that's been my method. I feel like a lot of people have all of these great ideas. Like they say, the graveyard is the richest place because people have all of these ideas and they die with them and never implement
Yeah.
them. So I I truly believe that, and that's what I try to teach the people who I come in close proximity with. Man, look, you don't have to spend all this money to figure this crap out. Just start doing it. Like they say, every master first started by first picking up a tool.
Facts. Facts. And it's funny because I mentioned the same thing, different conversation, but I mentioned the same thing on the last podcast, and people know I'm gonna say it because I'm writing it. It's the first sentence in my book, the new book that I'm writing on fraternal leadership. But excuses are tools of incompetence. And yeah, like it's deep, brother. It's deep. So when you say that, now as soon as I hear I've never ran into that, and I know it's because you have a mentality of I fell down 5 times, I'm gonna get up 6 times. But that is really, I feel like it's for some people is an intuitive nature to just fight through the wall, but some people can be taught that through resilience. I'm a MRT as well, and that's where a lot of my resiliency came from, the training, and then starting to use the training and implement it, and being super frustrated about something, and then just be like, you know what? Let me put it in perspective real quick because it's really not that bad. It is bad, but it's not that bad, and then I know I can bounce back. It's just a temporary problem, but I think that's pretty solid, but let me hear about your thoughts of what motivates you to go forward when you run into something hard.
I'm gonna I'm gonna be honest with you. My childhood was so filled with adversities and things like that, that to be honest with you, I've been to combat twice as a maneuver soldier, and I still haven't faced anything in the military that was as hard as my childhood.
Mm.
So the way that I see it is like life is a series of continuous adjustments. And as long as you are willing to make said adjustments, you'll be fine. I'm finna show my little nerdness here with a Dragon Ball Z line. We only do two things in life. We win and learn lessons. It's
Mm.
only a loss if you choose not to learn from them. That's just how I see it. Like I'm gonna keep making adjustments until I get the desired outcome. Even in life, like right now in my office, I got a desk. A few years ago, about 3 years ago, I started doing woodwork, and I ain't never picked up a tool a day in my life. Like I'm a mechanic by trade, but I've never picked up a woodworking tool in my life. And this bug just bit me, and I'm like, man, I want to build some stuff. So I started
Yeah, yeah.
building stuff, and I found out that I can construct stuff in my head, like from start to finish. It takes a while, but I can do it. And once I get the construction all the way done, I'll go and I'll draw it out in a book. But I found out that my great grandfather was this master woodworker, and I don't know, it was just like trying to get out of me. But what I said is I'm gonna keep making adjustments until I get the desired outcome. Because sometimes in life, the things you want don't exist. You got to build them.
Yeah, yeah, that's real. That's real. Hey, man, we gotta run this back. We definitely gotta run this back. I know you're gonna get me going like this. Before we close out, man, I definitely first want to thank you for joining the podcast and just taking the time this weekend just to conversate and fellowship with me. Truly appreciate it. Do you have any final words for the listeners out there?
Yes, I'll give y'all this. What I'll say is this is what I've been told is that an attitude is the one thing that we can control. And the other thing that I've been told is that attitudes are contagious like colds. My question to leaders is your attitude worth catching?
That's tough. That's tough. That's tough. That's tough. Somebody got to self check.
Is it worth catching?
Somebody got to self-check. Hey, so where can people find you, man? What are those handles? Let's get them.
Okay, so you can find me on Facebook at Richard Leon Green Jr. is my actual name. TikTok, you can find me under Oz_LTA. And on Instagram, you can find me under Richard Leon Green Jr. That's where I'm at. I got a podcast, but I ain't gonna put it out there because I got some work I need to do over there.
Gotta cook a little bit first.
There was a gap in the production, so
Gotcha.
we gotta get that thing caught up. It's about 50 episodes over there. There's a break in between, so we gonna
Gotcha.
leave it there for now.
Gotcha. Hey, man, truly appreciate you coming on. We say change your mind, change your money, change your life. And we want to thank you for doing that for our guest today, man. Truly appreciate you.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you for having me.
Indeed. We are over and out.
Thank you for joining the podcast. And remember, change your mind, change your money, change your life. We out.